Hi, I'm Rhonda Gaskins, broker Century 21 Lake Area Realty in the Lake Martin area. On average, our sales price are commanding a strong 96% of list price. Call me today and let me get started for you. 256-749-3644.
Hi, welcome into this week's matchup preview show. I'm Lizi Arbogast with Central Alabama Voice alongside Caleb Brooks, and it is the playoffs.
Yeah.
We're here. It's
crazy. No, I mean, it's crazy to me. I was talking to someone the other day. I mean, I think I mentioned it last week, but I mean, it really does seem like yesterday that I was calling Pike Road and Catholic and Wetumpka Prattville, and now, I mean, here we are getting ready for the first round of the playoffs, and it's the most fun time of year. And for these kids, you got to feel really happy for them that they're able to get to this point because – I was talking to someone the other day, and they were like, I just wasn't as excited about this football season. And I said, well, part of that had to be because – and I remember thinking, we're going to get 2 games.
You didn't know what was going to happen.
And so you were trying to kind of like not get too excited so that you had to let down. But it's been a great year, and the HSA deserves all the credit in the world because they've been at the forefront of this whole entire country of getting high school football going.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we will knock on all the wood that we can find that none of these teams get hit with the COVID bug, and potentially – and that, before they get a chance to compete. But we are going to pray for that not to happen, and we're going to talk some football. So we're going to start with 1A and go down the list of some Central Alabama playoff games. Florala is at Notasulga, Loachapoka is at Mckenzie, and Samson is at Maplesville in 1A this week.
Yeah, big games. Maplesville is a team that's always been there at 1A, and so they're always going to be one to watch. And then, obviously right down the road, Notasulga is going to be hosting Florala, which is going to be a big trip for them. And then Loachapoka having to go to Mckenzie, which is down around the Andalusia area. So that's going to be a long trip for them, and it's going to be fun to just see those two teams. And Notasulga seems to be on the come up right now. I mean, they've played really well the last couple of years, and so this playoffs could be huge for that program and them really taking steps in the right direction.
Yes, I agree with you there. I was impressed with them when I saw them as well. In 2A, St. Luke's is at BB Comer, another team on the up and up. Randolph County is at Clarke County, and Blacksher is at Lanett, which another huge hike.
Yeah, it's going to be a long trip for Blacksher. I'm surprised that them and Lanett are even in the same
right,
like part of the bracket. But for Comer, huge for them, and I think that they're a team that some people may be sleeping on that's going to have a really big chance of making a run because they really seem to be playing their best football right here at the end of the year, which is what you want to be doing. And when I went up there a couple of weeks ago, they told me, said, we don't feel like we prepared for Lanett the way that we needed to. It was kind of our first big game as a program in a while, and we probably overblown it. And so they want that game again. And if those two match up, it'll be interesting to watch.
I think there's a good chance it could happen for sure. In 3A, Flomaton is at Trinity, Providence Christian at Montgomery Academy, Dadeville headed to T.R. Miller, and Bayside Academy is at Montgomery Catholic. A lot of those teams are teams that we've talked a lot about throughout this season.
Yeah, and great matchups here in 3. I mean, Flomaton, who made a state championship game 2 years ago, and as a team, I talked to Bayside Academy's coaches, and they said, man, Flomaton's one of the biggest 3A teams I've ever seen in my life. And they're going to get Trinity, who has had a great season and has played really well with first-year head coach Granger Shook there, and it's a big game for them. Catholic and Bayside's going to be a big game. Coach Lassiter kind of coming back up here to Montgomery, or Coach Lazenby, and Coach Lassiter, but both of them coming back up here, and will be close to Alex City where they coached for a little bit, and playing against a good Catholic team that's got some athletes all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to Class 4A, West Blocton is at Alabama Christian, Vigor is at Handley, Montevallo is at St. James. Obviously, that Vigor-Handley game is definitely one to watch, as they all are, but that one for sure. I think Handley is another, maybe a sleeper team a little bit.
That and also, I think Vigor is. I mean, they got athletes. I mean, they just made a state championship in 5A 2 years ago, and now they're down at 4A, and they're one of those teams that we always see a 4 seed upset a 1 seed. And that happens pretty much every playoffs, and that's one that has the potential for it for sure. But Handley has been really good, and their only loss is an overtime loss where Central Clay goes for 2 last week. So
now Handley's had the weird season though, so it's tough to really get a feel for how good they are compared to other 1 seeds, for instance. On to 5A, Shelby County is at Pike Road. Sylacauga on the road to Faith Academy. Clay Central will host Satsuma, and Marbury is at Andalusia.
Yeah,
really good games there.
Great game. I mean, me and Brett talked about it on Lake Martin Sports Roundup the other day, that 5A is probably the most competition, and probably the one that you really don't know who's going to come out of either side. And it's crazy because 2 years ago you looked at 5A and you said 5A is one of the easiest to win. I mean, there's not as many challengers there at the top. now you've got about 10 teams literally with the capability to win the state championship, with St. Paul's coming down, and you add in Pike Road coming up from 3A and what they've been able to do. And there's going to be some really good games. For Sylacauga having to go to Faith Academy, it just makes that loss to Hopeville even more important, because they'd have been hosting. Now they're having to get on the bus and travel all the way down to Mobile to face a really good Faith Academy team who just had a guy that is kind of blowing up in the recruiting part, and getting offers from Alabama, Auburn, Clemson, LSU, all these teams all of a sudden. So that's going to be an interesting game. And then obviously Central Clay should be able to take care of business, but then they'll get the winner of Marbury and Andalusia, which will be a great matchup next week. I mean, whichever one makes it out of that one's going to be able to give Central Clay a game. So really looking forward to seeing how that one goes and who comes out of that one. And if Central Clay, if Marbury wins, Central Clay will have to go to Marbury next week. If Andalusia wins, Andalusia goes to them. So that's a big game for Central Clay, just from being able to stay at home standpoint.
Right, and we will talk one more 5A games, but hold that thought for just a moment. We'll move on to 6A first. Wetumpka is at Opelika, Lee is at Pelham, Carver at Helena, and Stanhope is at Eufaula. Again, another really good set of games here.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much just Benjamin Russell's region matching up with the other regions
with the other region,
there. And good games. Helena and Carver's one to watch, I think, for sure. Helena's getting better as the year's gone on, but I think Carver has too. Stanhope lost pretty bad to Eufaula earlier in the year, and I kind of expect that to probably happen again, in my opinion. And then, Wetumpka Opelika is going to be a good game, I think, just because that's a little rivalry. And the last 5 matchups with those two has been decided within 3 points.
Yeah, so, it's pretty crazy.
That's been a good one. And then, we talk about 1 versus 4 matchups. Lee has the best chance, I think, of any 4 seed to beat a 1 seed going up to Pelham this week.
And I think Pelham is a strong team, obviously, but Lee is super athletic, and I just don't know if Pelham can.
Yeah, I mean, we saw them make a run at the 7A title 2 years ago.
Right.
Where they had the lead on Central Phoenix City, who ended up going on to win it in the fourth quarter and blew it. So,
right.
And then last year they started out 5-0 and just fell apart and didn't make the playoffs. So for them, they got in there, kind of snuck in there, and I think now they're a dangerous team as the playoffs approach.
I agree with you. In 7A, Fairhope is at Central, Baker's at Auburn, Grissom's at Thompson, and Sparkman is at Hoover. Obviously, we're expecting some big things from a couple of those Birmingham teams I just mentioned. But we'll see. I mean, anything can happen, right?
Yeah, anything can happen. I think that the matchup with probably the 2 matchups in 7A in the South with the biggest chance for an upset would be Fairhope going to Central this week after Central just lost to Oxford and all that stuff. And then Prattville going down to Daphne is going to be a really good game.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, and then for Prattville, they got great defense. They went down to Theodore last year and beat Theodore on the road in Mobile, so they have experience doing that. And Prattville's trying to get back at the top, but they got their hands full with Daphne, and obviously they got a quarterback committed to TCU, and they've got other athletes all over the place down there. So that's going to be a really fun matchup.
And we'll head back to 5A for our Central Alabama Voice Game of the Week is UMS Wright at Holtville. UMS Wright, was that unbeatable team for so long. Holtville's on the rise. They got that, beat Sylacauga to get for their home playoff game, and I think I'm really excited about this matchup. I think it's going to be a really good game for both teams.
I know that Reeltown shut out Holtville last week and all that.
It was interesting.
But I think that's a lot with Holtville looking ahead. That's one of them games where, Reeltown, they're playing to get to 500. Holtville's kind of already getting ready for,
I don't know if they were resting people.
But not even on that, just from a mental standpoint, I can tell you as a player, you start thinking about, we got UMS next week, 3-time defending champs.
Right.
So I think that's probably where their minds were, and I think you're going to see Holtville play a lot better this week. And they
do better at home, Holtville does. They do a lot better at home.
And you have a struggling UMS Wright team who just had to make a trip all the way up to Helena last week. Now they're going to get back on the bus and come all the way back up to Montgomery to play against Holtville. And so 2 straight long trips for them. They're kind of falling apart here at the end of the year. Their best player, Edwin White, no longer playing. He committed to Tennessee and just said, I'm sitting out the rest of this year. So
that's wild.
They finished 6-4, which I think surprised a lot of people moving up to 5A. And I think Holtville's got a good chance to get a big win on Friday night, and that'd be huge for that program.
Yeah, I was going to say, regardless of where UMS Wright sits right now, it's still UMS Wright versus Holtville, and I think you're right. It would be a staple victory.
And first home game for them since, 1986. So getting a win at home would be, really big. And obviously if they win, they're going to have to go on the road next round no matter what. But just being able to host is a huge thing for them.
Yeah. Well, we're excited. Again, it's playoff time. So if you don't have plans on Friday night, get out and see a football game because these kids certainly deserve it. So we appreciate y'all tuning in, and we'll see you next week.